Okay, so here are the homework questions from Thursday that we didn't get to in class today. All right, so question 1 from the forces review sheet says a boy pulls with a horizontal force of 50 newtons. Now I know we did this in one class, but not in the other two. So force with 50 newtons on a wagon that is 300 newtons. So that is the FG for the wagon, right? It's not 300 kilograms, it's 300 newtons. Okay, now from that FG, we can get our mass. So FG equals mg, so that means m is equal to FG divided by g. So 300 newtons divided by 9.81 meters per second squared. And when you do that, you get an m of 30.58 kilograms. Okay, so we now have our mass. Now if we go back to this box, there's also going to be a force, normal force acting up, and friction will be acting back. So always in a question, the first thing you should do is your free body diagram with all of the forces. Okay, if we go back to the question, it says the coefficient of friction is 0.1. And it wants to know what is the acceleration. You're looking for A, and then also how far does the wagon travel. You're looking for delta D. If it takes 2 seconds to move, and it starts from rest, so VI is 0. Okay, so you have your mu, your A, your delta, you want your delta D. These last ones we'll use after we get our acceleration. So always in this questions, where you start is sum of the forces. And we usually always start with sum of the forces in the y direction, especially if there's friction. Because really, you do the sum of the forces in the y direction to find your Fn, and then you use your Fn for friction. So this wagon isn't moving in the y direction, so sum of the forces in the y direction equals 0. And where you've written some of the forces, you now replace it with what these forces are. So in the y direction, there's an Fn going up and an Fg going down. And they have to be equal to 0 when you put them together. Now, because there's opposite directions, you need to call one way negative, and usually we call down negative. So Fn will be positive, Fg will be negative. Solve for Fn. It's just equal to Fg, which they told us in the question was 300 newtons. Now, once we have that, we can find our friction, because FFR is equal to mu Fn. So friction is equal to 0.1, the coefficient, which they gave us in the question, times the 300 newtons we just found for Fn. So friction is equal to 30 newtons. Okay? So once we have our friction, now we can find our do our sum of the forces in the x direction. So sum of the forces in the x direction is equal to max. Okay, so if we look in the x direction, we have the force the kid's pulling with going one way, friction going the other. Always the direction of motion is positive, so it'll be F minus friction equals max. And you're trying to solve for A, so you need to divide both sides by m. So ax is equal to F minus friction over m. Now fill your numbers in. F was 50 newtons, friction was 30 newtons, m was 30.58 kilograms. Do the math, and you get A to be equal to 0.654, I think it is, meters per second squared. Now that we have A, we can easily get delta D, because we have A, T, VI, we want delta D. It'll just be delta D is equal to VI delta T plus 1/2 A delta T squared, but the VI T term goes to 0. So this is just going to be 1/2 0.654 meters per second squared times 2 seconds squared. 2 squared is 4, half of 4 is 2, so delta D is just going to be 2 times 0.654, 1.308 meters. Done. Number 2. Number 2 is a hockey puck. So it says a hockey puck is given an initial velocity, of 20 meters per second. So the hockey puck is initially going this way, VI, 20 meters per second. Then it says the puck remains on the ice and slides 120 meters. So delta D is 120 meters until it comes to a stop. So VF is 0 meters per second. Okay? So now it says determine the coefficient of friction. So you're looking for mu. So there's going to be an FG acting down. There's going to be an Fn acting up. Back this way will be friction. And there is no forward force on it. This arrow I have here, this is just the direction of the movement, because it said it was moving at a velocity of 20 meters per second. But there's no forward force once you give it this velocity, okay? Because when you hit a puck and it slides across the ice, you don't follow it and continue to put a force on. So it's already sliding when we've joined it, no forward force. But from this information, VI, delta D, and VF, we can find our A. So we know VF squared is equal to VI squared plus 2A delta D. So A is going to be equal to VF squared minus VI squared over 2 delta D. VF is 0, so negative 20 meters per second squared over 2 times 120 meters. 400 over 240. Negative 1.6 repeating meters per second squared. The negative means slowing down. Okay? So we now have our acceleration, we want our mu. So we come back here and we say, well, where do we start? Well, we start where we always start. Sum of the forces in the y direction to get our Fn. So sum of the forces in the y direction. It says in the question, the hockey puck stays on the ice. It means it's not going up in the air, so in the y is 0. So that means Fn minus Fg must equal 0, or Fn must equal Fg. And this is where the problem becomes, because you know Fg equals mg, but this time you can't find a value for that, because I didn't give you the mass of the puck. It's some unknown mass m. So just keep the Fg, okay? And you're going to carry it. We're going to go to friction. FFR is equal to mu Fn. So friction is equal to mu times, and Fn we just found to be mg. So friction is equal to mu mg. And now we go to the x direction. Sum of the forces in the x equals max. The only force in the x direction is friction. And it's opposite motion, so it goes in as a negative. And that's equal to max. But friction is mu mg. So negative mu mg equals max. So now your m's are going to cancel. And you want to solve for mu. So it's just going to be ax divided by negative g. So that negative 1.6 repeating meters per second squared divided by negative 9.81 meters per second squared. So mu ends up being 0.1699. Okay, and that's it for number 2. Number 3 says you are, just need to move the sheet so I can see, you are sliding an 80 kilogram box along a flat horizontal surface. So this is 80 kilograms. You're applying some force on it going this way. There's going to be a normal force going up. There's going to be gravity going down, friction acting backward. And then in the question it says the coefficient of friction is 0.4, and it says the acceleration is 2.5 meters per second squared. And it wants to know, so what force must you be pushing with? Okay, so we're going to start where we always start, sum of the forces in the y direction. By now you might be saying, oh, come on, do I have to do that? I know that it's going to be Fn equals Fg.